I have to go find the link to the. Are we going to get ready?
Oh, you want Tom to pull it up again?
Yes, we're ready to reconvene. As soon as you turn your speakers on.
That's what I did.
You have to do it each time, I think, on yours for some reason. I don't have to, mine stays muted. Our apples, yeah.
It's off now. It's off.
Okay.
Okay. We will now resume the meeting of the Executive Committee of August 1st, 2022. And we'll pick up close to where we left off.
You want me to get the packet back up?
And we'll look at the packet again and we'll ask more questions.
Go ahead with your question. We only have 18 minutes.
Yeah, we do.
On page 43 of the package. And this might be my ignorance. It probably is. It shows cum cap amount. It's not big, but it looks like it's not invested in any kind of interest bearing.
Well,
Can it be?
it can be. It is currently in an interest-bearing account at the bank, and you know we've my recollection from previous discussions. Well, first I'll say that in discussing with DLGF at our meeting, they said the interest that we're earning was not worth. I originally at last month's meeting tried to have some estimates in there for what the ending balance would be, what interest we would earn throughout the course of the year, and then the ending balance. And they said it's not a significant enough amount to worry about, so I just took it out. So
That's all we need to know.
our beginning balance will be greater than 45,418 on January 1, unless we spend something in between now and then. And our ending balance will be greater than whatever it is on January 1 at the end of the year.
Thank you. You just know that I like to make sure things are invested.
We earned a whopping 373 in June.
And that is,
$3.73.
and that is,
At the end of the year, we'll give $40. Come on.
and that is the case. All of the, I mean, the operating fund, the debt service fund, and the capital fund are all in interest-bearing accounts. So
The
now
interest rates are going up, guys.
they are, and with the operating fund, because we have a few, you know, $2 to $3 million in there, we are actually getting some interest every.
So we do need to watch the interest rates and
Yeah.
our own, what German American is doing for us. So,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Would it be appropriate to discuss the possible funding of a composting pilot program?
If the committee wishes,
I think that'd be a good time. Because we have to work.
we have 15 minutes.
So I had emailed you the proposal that came from Earth Keepers for a pilot program to set up composting facilities at volunteer sites where there is interest in multifamily housing. Of course, Joe Winia, who's here, and Brian, who is on the Zoom, can maybe speak more directly to that. And I do apologize that it's kind of a last minute thing. I was thinking this would be something the city could fully fund, but upon further reflection, I thought it would be a good thing to partner with the city and the waste district to do it together.
Yeah, so in short, as Isabel mentioned, it's a program that will be a division of Earthkeepers Compost with the intent of providing supplies and training and support to multifamily housing developments where the property managers approve of the establishment of set up composting bins. And then the residents, as many as are interested in participating on the site, are then trained to perform the composting themselves with the intent that they are partnered for a year-long period with this program, so that by the end of the period, they will have, in a sense, graduated with the knowledge of how to collectively operate their compost and transmit that knowledge to others who join the program over the course of time.
I have questions.
Please.
Penny probably has questions. How do you want?
Can I just, Ryan, can you hear us? And are you prepared to speak?
Yes, I can hear you. I am certainly prepared to speak.
Okay.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
So the first question is a very minor question. Let's say all these 5 or 6 apartment complexes have a program and it's working well. What do they do then with the bin of compost?
It's theirs to do with as they please. In general, the idea is if there are residents interested in composting, there would also be the potential that the residents would be gardening, or that the grounds would be able to make use of them. If the apartment complex manages the grounds and they're interested in keeping their compost and using it for their application, that would be the most logical and practical one. But at the end of the day,
Do you know of any apartment complexes that have gardens?
I do know that Abodes does at Woods at Latimer.
Wonderful.
Yes, they have a community garden space already. So that would be a very obvious case for theirs. And there's still more research, or I guess more inquiries to be made in terms of the other potential candidates, in terms of if they have those on their site as well, but there aren't any that I know of currently.
And the use of the compost would be beyond just for like vegetable gardening. They can certainly apply it on site in any of their landscaping that they need. And most of the multifamily housing has some type of ornamental landscaping needs, and so that also requires usually some mulch and or some compost to get that good fertility there. So I think it can be used on site for that. And that anecdotally really seemed to be the interest of Tamara Pollock, who's the owner and manager of Abodes, who we have met with and is very interested in being among the pilot candidates.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point you've mentioned abodes, and you don't need to name names. I just am curious that, you know, how much, exploration have you done with this? And do you have complexes that have expressed an interest, in this, if it's something that moves forward?
Yeah, I'll note that from research through the Commission on Sustainability with the City of Bloomington, there's already a survey that went out about apartment recycling practices and interest and acceptance of on-site composting. And there were among, let's say there were around 60 sites who responded to the survey.
Wow, that's a huge return.
And yeah, and that was of, I think, about 250 that were compiled, but not all reached out to. And among them, there were 3 sites that fall under the abodes collection that were interested. And then there were 3 others that said it was possible and just didn't have upper management approval as of the time the survey was conducted, about a year ago.
So how much space do you need for something like this? And I admit I haven't done my homework on this, so.
Sure. In short, the particular model that this program would follow is a 3-bin system, and each of the bins would be about a cubic yard. So they'd just be side by side. So it would be about 4 by 11 feet or so. And then it would just need to be in a resident accessible space and on direct contact to soil. So it wouldn't be able to go in, say, a parking lot if there was a very urban downtown apartment complex. It would not be eligible.
So you're talking about a constructed bin, not one of the earth machines or
Correct.
something you go to the local hardware store and buy.
Right.
Okay.
It would be fabricated by earth keepers for the program specifically. And it would be,
The names of the 3 bins, say that again.
I think I mentioned them. The volumes or just the names of
The
them?
names of them.
So they would be the Browns bin, which has the carbon rich material in it. And that's what you would mix in to the active bin, which is where you put your food scraps. And then when the active bin becomes full, it becomes the aging bin. And that's when you go to the 3rd bin in the system, and that becomes your active bin as the 2nd bin ages. So first bin is always Browns, then you have 1 active and 1 aging. And then another interesting component of the system is if the aging and the active don't happen in the same timeline, you can cascade bins onto it. So if you need to have 2 aging bins because you're producing more than the rate at which it's finishing, you just add a new active one. And then once you hit your number of bins to meet your capacity, you just start rotating through them again. So they would all be aging as you move through them.
If these are made out of wood, what's the lifetime of the bins?
I would estimate at least 5 years of just like solid, sturdy state.
Are these treated lumber?
Ideally not, just because of
Because you don't want it.
right.
Because it'll start to decompose and you don't want that in the.
Right, yeah, because
don't want those chemicals.
there's
It'll
ways to treat
It'll
them,
leach.
right,
Yeah.
right. So they'll just be natural lumber. So obviously there's biodegradation happening
Then you will
against the
have,
wood. So
then you'll have
yes,
to compost those bins.
Exactly. Yeah, they start to age in place, yeah.
and they're
Sorry.
And you can grow mushrooms.
also true. And they're modular too. So all panels are separate. So if there's any one piece of the panel that broke, it would just be a single panel replacement. So it'd be 4 walls and the lid.
And then with the brown source, is that just gonna be yard and landscape maintenance on site?
Yeah, ideally, they'll have all of the falling leaves that they'll need, but they could keep them on site and then
And
same
grass clippings.
grass clippings if they were dried. If they're fresh, they would be more of the active nitrogen side of things than the carbon side of things. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the ideal, is that the browns are also collected on site, and I think the most powerful part of this model is that it's really minimal input, minimal cost. There's no hauling, nothing is mechanized, and it's at a scale where it can be managed by the producers of the waste. So it would just be a pitchfork and the participants who would be then taking all of this food waste diversion, which is 25% of the waste stream nationally. It's about 22 where they test their studies locally. But
So if these are multifamily residences, I'm thinking apartment buildings, and people move in and out of those on a regular basis. How is this model where the first group that's trained then mentors and trains the next group really going to work if there's a lot of turnover?
That's a very good question. That was actually something that Tamara had mentioned at Abodes. We spoke to her about the program. And that is, I think, part of the pilot process. So I'll say first that the program doesn't necessarily have to end in a hard stop at 12 months where we're hands off. So we'll still be available as administrators of the program to all of the active sites. So they can reach out to us and request support if they need it, additional training, if they need it, tool replacement, if they need it. It would really just be the partner period is sort of the package that's provided to start that all off. If it turns out that over time there is too much turnover, there could be return visits that would just be on a sort of as needed basis and then billed accordingly or invoiced accordingly. Yes, that's
Yeah.
also the plan to actually record like there will be an initial training with all of, so the initial training when everyone signs up and the bins are installed, that will be recorded and then provided to the residents and the property managers.
I think the limiting factor that I see in expanding this type of operation is the need for soil underneath the unit. And it just means that it's
What do you mean?
because
Instead of putting it in a parking space?
instead of putting it in the parking space.
Yeah, so there needs to be room.
Is there any way to adapt the system so that it could have concrete or asphalt
Generally, no.
floor?
I'll note first that in the survey that was conducted, there was a question specifically asking, do you have ground access on site? So there were a fair number that were no's, that it was just not possible and they would not be eligible to participate in the program. And just biologically speaking, in terms of the needs of the compost, both for the biome, but also the temperatures too, to be able to not have it on a constant hot surface. And also to be able to, and water as well, to not have it on something that's going to be an impervious surface. So there's a lot of limiting factors that would really make it not practical or possible to try to attempt it in those environments.
It's not a big space. We're talking about is something smaller than this table
Yes.
in terms of this area.
Yep.
So,
But like Smallwood doesn't have that.
right.
But Smallwood
Just-
doesn't have that.
It's just, yeah.
You mean
Some,
the avenue on College?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that's just, that, like Joe said, I mean, some places
just
are just an
reality.
automatic, no, that's just the reality of their
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
And I also think that, when you talk about the, annual leases and the annual turnover, but I think that, and I mentioned in the email back to you about whether, we'll be looking at any complexes outside of the city, because the farther you get away from campus, the more likely you are to have people that stay longer than that 1-year lease term.
Yeah, and you're more likely to have families that may be more interested in doing this than students. And also further outside the city, you're more likely to have. Oh my God. Sorry, you're more likely to have soil.
Correct.
That
Yes.
you-
More space. That's also true.
I have to ask that, because this is something we're asking to be partnering with a private entity. Is this supposed to be a revenue generation for Earth Keepers?
Not surprisingly, not really.
Okay.
It would just be cost covering.
And then, I mean, that's,
So I'm wondering about sustainability of this operation. Because I can see a pilot program being funded, but not a pilot, and then a repeat of the pilot, and then another. That's not a pilot.
Correct.
That's a train.
But I would think that if there was true benefit to the apartment complexes in any sense, that then they would want to keep this going at their
Right.
expense.
And I'm hoping that there's that kind of discussion with the apartment manager.
I'll note very quick categorically that any of the pilots that I've started would not be a loss. Essentially, they will have all the equipment, will be in their possession, all of the materials and all the participants, so that could continue over time without need for continuous funding. That's complete. The second benefit is, I think it would be a demonstration of the functionality of the program, so that a paid model would be viable then after others have seen the success of the piloted model. Instead of just saying, are you willing to fund this without proof of concept? Having it funded municipally would allow the proof of concept to have been completed so that any subsequent interested apartment complexes can say, okay, we have these 6 sites that have already been doing this for a year and they've been successful.
Or even it could provide the basis to pursue, to be more successful in pursuing external grant funds.
Also true.
Yes.
And there would be a corresponding, I assume there would be a corresponding reduction in trash calls if there's a good participation at any complex. That's our time. I guess since we had discussed earlier that the county council would not be very amenable to a deficit budget, we should maybe keep this in mind for an additional appropriation instead.
Yeah, I think it's worth still continuing to consider and we're, keeping in discussions and,
Mhm.
if-
But I am
if-
hoping to get money in the 2023 city budget to pay for some of it.
That's good.
we say at every meeting, we have adequate reserves. We need to find something to do with them. So,
Right,
I
we're
think-
generating income from the interest fund,
but yeah, but I think, the reserves are out there. And if somebody, Earthkeepers or if anybody were to approach us, with an idea of, would you help contribute to this? We always talk about our reserves. It's something we should consider.
Yeah.
And we can always appropriate the money.
I would just add to this that if you could also try and identify some non-city apartment complexes, it would be helpful.
Yeah.
And it might be useful to understand the sociology of the operation. Yeah.
I look forward to having it brought to the whole board.
Okay. So hearing that, I will conclude our meeting with an adjournment. And thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.